I want to thank the organizers of the World Congress for inviting me. This is my 8th World Congress. It's magnificent to be here. And with this presentation, we at the Marriage and Religion Research Institute, which is a part of Family Research Council, which is headed by Tony Perkins, we're launching MARRIpedia, which is a service to everyone here, and we hope to the whole world. It's really a gradually expanding encyclopedia of the social sciences on marriage, family, sexuality, religious practice. It's an encyclopedia of the two great loves, the love of your neighbor, your closest neighbor, your spouse, and the love of God. As your introduction to MARRIpedia, you can retrieve this presentation later on at it. It'll be on the homepage, marripedia.org. There it is. Also, we will have a link to Dr. Wilcox's very recent presentation on marriage and the economy of states, and also to Dr. Carroll's work just cited. That'll also be on the homepage. So we hope MARRIpedia will be of increasing service to you, your friends, your family, your church, your schools. And in this coming presentation, don't try and decipher too much the charts that are there. They'll be there for you to dig into later. I suggest you sort of go with the flow and the general impression. And those who are data wonks among you, you can go later and really dig down and dig deep and do all sorts of interesting things. So what we're going to do next is the key points I will cover is 1, worship impacts chastity. Chastity impacts marriage will be the second point. 3rd, marriage impacts many other things, including, as Dr. Wilcox and Dr. Carl will point out, it matters economic, but also many other things, health, welfare, education, happiness. And finally, all of these things impact society as a whole. As a matter of fact, together they are society. So I hope to demonstrate the foundational nature of piety, the worship of God, and chastity to the social and political order through the impact they have on marriage and thus on society and on the nation as a whole. Now, this is to make a link, a connection with Dr. Wilcox's later presentation. Here we're looking at the grade point average by family structure of U.S. high school and mid-school children. This is the combined average of English and math scores. And as you can see, teenagers from the always intact married family thrive significantly better than others in these scores. This here is from the same survey, the National Longitudinal Survey of Adolescent Health, and this here is the work of Dr. Mark Regnerus of the University of Texas at Austin, who presented yesterday. And here he shows the power of worship in the school performance of inner city children. For them, weekly worship delivers an increase in the probability of an education that is equivalent to moving them out of the inner city into a middle-class neighborhood and their better schools. In my understanding of public policy, there is nothing that comes close to delivering this impact on education. Nothing. Worship trumps, I think, everything else in the social sciences in delivering this, except maybe marriage. And marriage and worship together, as we've already seen in the prior chart, give the knockout punch. So it is no surprise then, what we're looking at here are those who received mostly A's. And they come from the blue that's indicated there is the always intact married family that worships God weekly. The other blue is the always intact married family that doesn't worship at all. The 2 reds are the broken families, the high worship and the no worship. So in here, which group do you think is going to have the highest income 10 years from then? Common sense and myriad social science studies tell us that the better you do in school, the more likely you're going to earn more later and the more productive you're going to be in the economy. Marriage does increase productivity. This chart sums up myriad social science studies, controlling for everything, including even genetics. The Minnesota identical twin study was used on that. And to sum it up, you can say fairly robustly that marriage increases the productivity of a man by about 27%. Ladies, you have quite an impact. And among these men, the most productive are married men with 3 children or more. They are the heavy lifters of the economy. This chart is preliminary unpublished data from MARRI, the work of Dr. Henry Petrikas on our staff, and it ought to catch the interest of every politician. Controlling for all relevant factors, things like education, background, etc., married couples contribute at least 20% more to the tax pool than do their exact male and female single counterparts. The consequences of that we're going to draw out a bit in this chart. What you're looking at here in that red line is the state of marriage, of intact marriage, for those between the age of 35 to 39. So those in their well-established age group. And you can see the red line, that's from 1940 down to the dip leading to the year 2000, and that broken line is from 2000 to 2013, where marriage is held fairly steady and stable, not with much change. But between 1940 and the year 2000, you can see a rise and then a significant drop. Now, the implication for that last slide on taxes, the decrease that must have come about between 1970 and 2000 is a significant withdrawal of the high tax contributors from the tax pool. So it's no wonder we see what everybody here is experiencing. Government is imposing small taxes all over the place, I think, to make up for the shortfall that results from this. Now, the retreat from marriage has been quite dramatic in one ethnic group, which we'll use just to illustrate the issue a bit more. This ethnic group has suffered much as a result, and that's the plight of the black family. What we're looking at here in this chart, and again, you can look at it easier and in more detail at marripedia.org, we have 4 groups here. Moving from the left to the right, you've got high school dropouts, then high school graduates, college graduates, and professional graduates. And this is from the year 1970 to the year 2010. And the blue line is the retreat from marriage. Among high school dropouts, it's been the steepest, from 90% married in 1970 to 40% in 2010, a 50% drop. Among high school graduates, a 40% drop. College graduates, a 30% drop. Professional graduates, a 25% drop. This drop has undermined the attainment of a significant portion of the economic dreams of Dr. Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. What a pity, what a plight. The absence of marriage in black families makes a very big difference. Today, only 17% of 17-year-old African Americans are living in an intact married family with their biological parents. For more on this, actually, on the black family, we have a special report on marripedia.org, and you can dig deeper there. Now, I'm going to address the question, what undermines marriage most? In this chart, which in my book is for me the single most important chart in the social sciences. That's a bit of a big building, let me back it up. Why? This chart depicts the percent of first marriages that are still intact after the first 5 years of marriage. The red line are men, the blue line are the women, the wives. Among both men and women who have never had any sexual partner, that's those on your extreme left, 99% of men, 97% of women, we can round that out, don't take the numbers too exact, let's say in the high 90s of them are still married 5 years after if they have had no one else as their sexual partner except themselves. They've been totally monogamous. Then there's a big divergence between men and women. For women who have had one sexual partner other than their husband, and for most such women it has happened before marriage, the intactness of the marriage 5 years out has dropped to 64%. So a drop of 33%, and that's twice the rate of the drop for men. Those women who had 2 extra partners, so a total of 3, it drops to 55%. It takes the men, as you can see, longer, and it plateaus around thereafter. So the more sexual partners, the less the capacity to sustain marriage for both men and women, but especially for women. Given the impact of chastity on out-of-wedlock births, on divorce, and through those on income, productivity, savings, health, longevity, happiness, addictions, all these myriad other things, abortions, STDs, it's obvious that chastity is foundational for society and for its major tasks, including for the economy. It is likely no surprise to anyone that chastity is related to the worship of God. It's not a vast area of research, but here are a few illustrations. This chart here depicts those who are likely to engage in one-night stands or pickups. It's clearly rarely among those who worship weekly. That's the small group on your left. It's less frequent among those who worship at least monthly, and it's most frequent among those who worship rarely or not at all. In this chart, we're looking at the lifetime number of sexual partners by age of first intercourse. And for a girl who first has her first intercourse at age 12, the probability for her is that she will have 21 sexual partners in her lifetime. The implications of that are just devastating. In this chart, we see the age of first intercourse and the probability of an out-of-wedlock pregnancy. For those who have first intercourse at age 12, the probability is 75%. The longer that sexual initiation is delayed, the much less the probability of such a thing happening. And of course, this gets this young woman off by having the child out of wedlock. It gets her adult life off to a weakening start, and for her child very much as well. Now we're going to look at teenagers. These are particularly who become sexually involved early, but we're looking here at the impact of worship on them, and those black arrows are going to show the difference that worship makes. For those who initiate sexuality at different stages, you can see it rises with age, but those who worship are much less likely to initiate at that age, and the black arrow gives you the impact of religious worship. This chart is an amazing one in my book. The pediatricians who did this work, it's amazing. What we're looking at here is the difference worship makes on boys' sexual self-control, whether they're blessed or cursed, with high testosterone levels or low testosterone levels. The high level of testosterone is the red line, and the blue is the low level of testosterone. And we're looking at the difference between those who worship weekly and those who don't. Frequency of worship of God makes a significant difference on their initiation of sexual activity. Worship lessens the influence of the testosterone level. Lack of worship unleashes the influence of testosterone. God and sexual control go together. Look this one up later at marripedia.org. Now, given the indications, it's no surprise that those in an intact married family who worship God weekly are most likely to have had only one sexual partner in their lifetime. That's what this depicts. While those who worship not at all are the least likely. A thriving society needs a culture of chastity, of joyful chastity, if it's to be a happy society. We could go a repressive chastity route, but that would be a rather dull and not nice society. If no chastity, what we will get is a dysfunctional society. Chastity matters, powerfully so. Now, to review some of the points made so far and to connect the dots again, we've seen that worship impacts chastity, chastity impacts marriage, marriage impacts education, income, and loads of other outcomes we haven't measured here, and all those in turn impact and actually make up the construct of the functioning of our society at present. The good news from this particular chart, what it depicts actually, is those who achieve a very happy marriage. And the good news here is that despite the background, those who come from broken families that don't worship, being those who are most, as it were, unprivileged to achieve that, a very significant number can get there. And you can see there's not a huge difference between the four groups here. So the good news is this is achievable. Though again, you do see the increased influence of parental background and of present worship. They do make a difference. But no matter the background, a very happy marriage is attainable no matter what your background. That's the good news from this chart. Next comes the frequency of sexual relations. This is one of the great counterfactuals. I wish Hugh Hefner and Playboy were here to absorb this. Who has the most frequent sexual relations? That's weekly or more. Again, it is those from an intact married family that worships God weekly. Now, this is over the long run. Obviously, if you look at 20-year-olds, who's having the most frequent sexual relations? It's clearly not going to be this group, because at age 20, most Americans are not married, and those who are not getting. But you're looking at the long time. Look at people in their 30s and early 40s. Who's having the most frequent sexual relations? The intact married family that worships God weekly. And among these sexually active Americans, all sexually active Americans, who is most likely to be sexually the most satisfied? That's what you see on the left. Who's the most loved? The next one in. And we're contrasting here the intact married family that worships God weekly with, in the red, the non-married who don't worship at all. Who feels the most loved? Who's most likely to feel the most wanted and needed during sexual intercourse? Who feels the most taken care of sexually? And last, but definitely not least, who feels the most thrilled and excited? In all cases, those from intact marriages that worship God weekly, they are the sexual long-distance runners, champions of America. My reading of the data leads me to believe that if you add virginity at the time of marriage, in other words, those only monogamous people, that the scores get even better for them. Now, the implications from the social sciences are going to lead me to something I'm going to say now, which is not in MARRIpedia. What I'm about to say is not social science. This is my personal reading of all the data over a lifetime dealing with social science, dealing with marriage, family, children. In the sexual, as in all other things, Christ is the real restorer, the real revolutionary, who transformed man, woman, marriage, family, and society. And the social sciences go a long way to illustrating that he keeps his promise. Seek first the kingdom of God, and all these other things will be added unto you. Now, Western culture, by more or less following his teaching, operated with phenomenal strength for centuries. We can see what the retreat from marriage has done, what it will do. Let's thank him. Let's thank God. I wish you all and your children and your children's children an intact married family that worships God weekly. May they thrive, may you thrive, and may you visit marripedia.org.